Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures, and today we're doing part 141 of our Planet Zoo mod spotlights, where we take a look at some of the wonderful mods people have been making and use them to talk about some of the wonderful biodiversity that we share our world with. So today we've got a very interesting assortment of animals. We've got a couple extinct ones, we've got quite a few birds, we've even got a crocodile today, so really excited to get stuck into this one. So we're going to be starting off today with the by Lorby, we've got the Eastern Crested Guineafowl, or Garetta pachani. Did you say that? These guys you can see are a large bushy crested guineafowl that are found around forest edges, gallery forests, and forest savanna mosaics that occur from about north central Kenya to southern Somalia and central Tanzania. So that's pretty cool as well. Typically, in terms of their description, these guys you can see they are bare with bluish skin on their face, on the head and neck, with a large patch of red skin on their face, around the eyes, along with dark red irises. They were also once considered conspecific with the southern crested guineafowl and western crested guineafowl, but now they're considered their own species. So the main way to tell them apart is the color of the bare skin on the head and neck, and some plumage details and eye color. And they are considered omnivorous species, so they feed on plant matter, but also a variety of invertebrates, which is quite cool. So in terms of size, they're quite large. They get about 48 to 50 centimeters long, with a bushy black crest that you see going on there, where they get the name crested guineafowl. Bluish skin, as I mentioned before. And females are similar to males, though on average they are smaller. Juvenile plumage, you can see they're born with a little bit more of a typical little baby bird color of just browns and yellows and things like that. Adults are much more typical color like this. And in terms of measurements, typically wing length for these guys is between 245 to 276 centimeters for both males and females. And mass is typically between 721 to 1536 grams, so a little over a kilo sometimes on average. So, in terms of distribution, as I mentioned, they're found in north central Kenya, southern Somalia, and Tanzania, central Tanzania, where they like to live forest edges as well as savanna mosaics, even sometimes in primary forest. They are non-migratory, so they like to just, hang out and wander around. They don't really migrate too much, but they like hanging around doing their own thing. And in terms of feeding, they typically forage on the ground, or they'll scrape leaf litter and debris with their feet, but also be known to eat fruit from trees. They're also omnivorous, so they've been known to feed on all sorts of plant materials, such as like shoots and stems, bulbs, and roots. Animal food they'll eat is typically like small invertebrates, like larval bugs, grasshoppers, millipedes, spiders, ants, termites, and even small snails. In terms of their social behavior, they're considered to be less vocal than relatives, but they do perform like a creak sound, which is quite similar to the helmeted guineafowl. And they are monogamous, so they will pair together. Typical social behavior is outside breeding seasons, they'll live in groups of about 10 to 30 individuals or in flocks, though they can occasionally be up to 50. Also seen in small groups or as singles by themselves or in pairs. They typically will lay an egg in the wet season, April to June, August, and November to December. And the nest sites on the ground are usually under dense cover below logs or tree roots or under bushes, where they will scrape the ground to make this lining and make it up of dead leaves and grass. And then they will lay eggs, typically between 4 to 5 eggs, sometimes occasionally up to 7, and sometimes lower than 3. And the incubation itself will take about 23 days. We'll have a look at the babies while we're talking about that. The incubation itself takes 23 days. And the baby are covered with like buffy kind of color of down, and they also have, you can see these stripes. Chicks typically weigh about 82 grams at about 7 days and can fly after about 14 to 21 days, with both parents taking care of the babies until that stage. In terms of their conservation, they are considered least concern, although they seem to be reasonably common. They're quite hard to observe because they're so secretive, and they might suggest that these guys are less common than we think. And they are perhaps almost gone from southern Somalia and probably have disappeared from some sites in recent decades, but they are still considered least concern. But it's kind of a hard species to study, so they could be a little bit rarer than they let on. But still, really, really cool one. A nice mod done by Lorby. I do love a Lorby mod. So next up, we're going to be moving on to... a lot of the mods today have been done by Great Cakes mods, but this one was done by Lorby, as I mentioned. So next up, we're having a look at the Chestnut-eared Aracari, which is really cool. So let's have a look at these guys. So another really interesting little one. So these guys are a near passerine bird from the toucan family, so the Ophacidae. They're typically found around Bolivia, Peru, Argentina, Colombia, Paraguay, and Ecuador, so quite a wide range. These guys get between 43 to 47 centimeters, or about 17 to 19 inches long, and weigh between 220 to 310 grams. Males and females typically have the same colors, though the female's bill is typically shorter. There are a couple different subspecies. So the dominant subspecies has a yellow line and mostly black mantle in the maxilla, and adult males will have a black crown and upper nape with a lower nape, dark green back and red rump and blue facial skin, so the males will have that as well. But the other subspecies is just mainly just paler with some little bit difference of colors as well. So yeah, this is a female. Let's see if we can find a male. There must be a male around here somewhere. There's the babies at the moment. We'll talk about the babies when we get some babies. Let's see if we can find them. Find a male. There we are. So you can see the difference, male and female there, I think. You can see they're a little bit more, yeah, a little bit more colourful. Oh, camera messing with me. Anyway, we'll keep talking about these guys. Really, really cool. Anyway, these guys are a bird found in the western and southern Amazon basin, with the dominant subspecies, or the one that's typically the dominant, is more northerly, with the one being more south. So Australis is typically found more south, hence Australis. So the dominant subspecies is found east of Brazil, along the Amazon, Rio Negro, and Australis, which is the other subspecies, found in north-central Brazil, South Paraguay, and Argentina. But they can be found in all sorts of different landscapes. So they can be found, most of them typically have flowing water or standing water. So examples can be wet forests, lakes and rivers, flooded river islands, swamps, and gallery forests. They've also been observed around edges, clearings, and disturbed areas of drier forests, bamboo, and cakeberries and cerrados, also coffee plantations too. They typically live in elevation below 600 meters, or about 2,000 feet, but occur up to about 1,300 meters or 4,300 feet in some Andean locations, which is quite interesting. So in terms of their movements, these guys are do not make these conventional migrations, but they will gather in large flocks and move into the astral winter in areas which fruit that kind of is an issue. In terms of feeding as well, they are typically, like other toucans, feed a lot on fruit, which is quite cool. They'll typically pluck it from the branches even while hanging down, and will investigate vines, shrubs, crevasses, and cavities with their large beak. And they also have been seen eating fruits and nectars and take bird eggs and nestlings. So they do have a little bit of a predatory side, which is quite interesting as well. In terms of breeding, as we'll talk about that, we'll have a look at these cute little babies. Look how adorable this little guy is. How can you not love this little goober? They really love this little guy. So the chestnut-eared Aracari's breeding season varies across its range. So typically in the northern parts of the range, it's from February to September, and then the opposite, September to February for the southern population. It mostly nests in old woodpecker holes, if they can enlarge them as well if they need to. There's also some evidence of cooperative breeding, so as small groups of nests are more common than just pairs, so they will kind of hang out together and kind of help each other a bit by looking out for predators. It's a clutch size of at least 2, but sometimes they can have up to 4 babies. And the incubation period and time of fledging is actually not known for the species, which is quite interesting, but I imagine it's no more than probably a couple of weeks to a month or so, like most other species of toucans. A couple months at the most. Chestnut Aracari's kind of make a very interesting call. It's like a sneep, and they make all sorts of different really calls. They are quite vocal birds, which is very interesting. So in terms of their conservation, these guys are considered a least concern, which is a good thing. They have an extremely large range, but have a large population that is thought to have been decreasing. No immediate threats have been identified, but they are considered quite common throughout most of their range, or relatively common throughout most of their range. Thought to be more common in Colombia and Peru, but a little bit more fairly common in Ecuador. But they are found in many protected areas, but are hunted in some places. And also because of the, especially in the Amazon, habitat destruction, climate change, it can be a big impact for these guys. But still, a really, really awesome little mod. Another great cakes mod. That was definitely great. Love these little guys very, very much. Definitely a big fan. So that's a chestnut crested Aracari's there. So we're going to move on next. Another great cakes mod. We have got the Great Hornbill. And it's definitely great. You have a look at these guys. So look at this great guy. So this is the Great Hornbill. Also known as the Great Indian Hornbill or the Great Pied Hornbill. They're the largest member of one of the larger members of the Hornbill family, which is quite interesting. So these guys are quite a large bird. They get about 95 to 130 centimeters long, with an average 152 centimeter or 60-inch wingspan, and get between 2 to 4 kilograms on average. The average weight for 7 males is about 3 kilograms, and females is just under that. So they are the heaviest of all the hornbills, but not the longest Asian hornbill. And with the separation of ground hornbills in their own family, the great hornbill actually regains its title as being the heaviest of all the hornbills, though they're not the longest. And females are typically smaller than males, and they have like blue, whitish instead of red eyes. There's not too much difference. But the most prominent feature you can see in these guys as well is that big casque on the top of the head. It appears almost like a U shape, and it's actually hollow on the inside, so it's quite light, which is interesting as well. And this casque is hollow and serves no purpose, although it may be used for sexual selection. They'll also indulge in aerial casque butting, so they'll strike each other in flight. And the male will also spread the preen gland secretions onto it to help give it its bright yellow color. And the casque is black with serrated edges that become worn with age. And like a lot of other bigger birds, they do have heavy wing beats that can be heard from a distance. And like other members, they do have highly pneumatized bones with wing cavities to make sure they're as light as possible. So in terms of their distribution, they're typically found around the forests of India, Bhutan, Nepal, mainland Southeast Asia, and Sumatra. But a distribution is fragmented in the Western Ghats and the forest of the Himalayas. But they do prefer old-growth forest that's unlocked in hilly regions. And in Thailand, they've been found to have home ranges of up to about 4 kilometers during the breeding season and up to 14 kilometers during the non-breeding season, which is interesting. And there has been lots of particular attempts to study the diversity of populations has been attempted, which is quite interesting. So this is the male. We'll have a look at the female. Let's see if you have another male. Or there's another male. Let's see if you can find a female. So there's a little bit of difference. You can see the brighter iris in there in the females. You can see that's what the female looks like. So in terms of food and feeding, they're usually seen in small parties, but larger groups have been found around fruit trees. A congregation of about 200 birds actually has been reported in Bhutan, but typically they are by themselves. Their diet is typically fruit, and figs are actually quite an important food source for them, as they also like lipid-rich fruits as well, and they obtain water entirely from their diets of fruits as well. They're also quite important disperser for lots of species of trees and plants, which helps propagate the forest, of course. They'll also eat small mammals, birds, and small reptiles, and even lion-tailed macaques have been seen with these guys. I know there's even been reports of these guys hunting like small frogs and also fledging birds and even like bats, I think, as well. I think I've seen these guys hunting bats. So mostly fruit eaters, but they will occasionally supplement their food, of course, with living things. They've also been seen, they typically forage among the branches, looking for insects, nestlings, and small lizards and tear them apart. They've even been known to hunt squirrels, owls, owlets, and pigeons, which is quite interesting. So in terms of breeding, we'll have a look at these cute little guys. So in terms of breeding for these cuties, during the breeding season, which is January from April, great hornbills are very vocal. They make loud duets and make a loud sound to kind of second the male once the female joins in. Then they will join in and then obviously copulate. So they typically prefer mature forests for nesting, as they have like large old trees, but typically that have canopies or up in the canopy they prefer. They typically will form monogamous pairs and then will live in small groups of 2 to 40 individuals, though groups of up to 20 birds are typically like the average. The female hornbill will then build a nest in a hollow tree trunk and then seal it up with a plaster wall made out of her feces, and then she will remain in prison there and rely on the male to bring her food until the chick is half developed. And during this period, the female will undergo a complete molt as well. The young chick have no feathers but are very plump, and the mother will be fed by her mate through the slit as well, and then the clutch will usually consist of 1 to 2 eggs. She'll incubate them for about 38 to 40 days, and the female will void feces through the nest slit, and then as the chicks do until the age of about 2 weeks. And then once the female emerges from its nest, the chicks they steal it again. And then the young birds typically don't have any trace of a casque. And after their second year, they seem to build this casque in the third age. They get the 2 edges that grow outwards. And full development of this casque takes about 5 years. And in terms of roosting, they do have regular roost sites, and they tend to arrive pretty at sunset from long distances, and they follow routes. Several small trees will be in the vicinity of these ones, the highest branches with little foliage, so that's kind of where you can tell it's good creatures. They jockey for positions until late at dusk, and then they sleep and draw their necks back to build an upward angle as well, so that's quite cool. In terms of threats, they are considered threatened. I believe they are considered vulnerable, yes. So main issues for these guys is deforestation. They're also hunted for meat. I will have a look at you. Hunted for their meat and fat and body parts like their casque, which is used for ornaments. Tribal people also hunt them for various parts and charms and even consider them delicacies and hairdressers, things like that. So that could be an issue. But they are considered vulnerable, and there's been conservation projects to help provide tribes with feathers from captive hornbills instead of wild ones to substitute the wild ones. But they are considered vulnerable just because of those issues. But there are very few hornbills in captivity, and few of them breed well. Females of the nest are extremely easy to capture, and birds caught in the wild are mostly female. But breeding them is notoriously difficult, but they have attempted to, being this doesn't accept attempts. So their extreme selectivity of males and their long, strong pair bonds tend to be a big issue. So you need to make sure the females have lots of males to pick from, because they are monogamous. Captive hornbills will typically eat fruits and meats. A healthy diet will have fruits but some protein, and a few have actually been tamed to captivity but have quite high strung, which is funny as well. Makes sense for a bird. And they're quite an important symbol. They're a big cultural thing. They both like their name in Nepal is Harami, which means king of the jungle. And their official state bird of the Indian states of Kerala and the Akumala Pradesh, I believe saying that. But yeah, really, really cool birds. How can you not love these hornbills? Look, they're playing with each other. Love these guys. Definitely love hornbills. This is Derv. Very, very awesome. Very, very cool. So, next up, that's another great cogs mod done. We're going to be having a look at the Morelet's crocodiles. This is done by Just That, so it should be just that. Just a really, really awesome crocodile. So, the Morelet's crocodile, also known as the Mexican crocodile. They're a moderate-sized crocodile from Mexico, Belize, and Guatemala. So, in terms of their evolution, they are a member of the group Crocodilus. They most likely evolved in Africa, then spread throughout Southeast Asia, the Americas. And in terms of their phylogeny, where they do fit on the family tree, they are in the member Crocodilus. They are more closely related to New World crocodiles, quite basal to that group though. So their two closest relatives would be the Cuban crocodile and the Nile crocodile, which is quite interesting. So they're quite basal to that group. So you can see they've got a very broad snout and about 66 to 68 teeth when fully mature. They are dark grayish brown in color with spots, and they're quite similar to the American crocodile, but it seems to be somewhat darker. Juvenile crocodiles as well kind of have dark bands, very typical, little baby crocos, little dark bands. Is that? Oh, that's the juvenile, yeah. So dark bands. You can be a little bit lighter though. So they're actually quite small compared to a lot of other crocodilian species. They're not the hugest. Their males can be larger than females, so a typical adult Morelet's crocodile is about 2.1 meters or just under 7 feet long, with a typical body range for about 1.5 to 2.7 meters or 4 foot 11 to 8 foot 10. Like that. Almost all crocodiles in excess of 8 feet or about 2.5 meters were males that were quite old. And large adult males have been recorded to be about 10 meters, but that's extremely rare. And there's other specimens that have been, because people love to measure crocodiles and come up with fake things of these guys getting 3 to 4 meters long and things like that. But most of the kind of really large ones that have been verified are typically no more than 3 meters at about 150 kilograms or even 180 kilograms. So still quite big animal, but not as big as a lot of other crocodilians. In terms of their habitat, they tend to be found in freshwater habitats in Central America and along the Gulf of Mexico into Belize, Guatemala, and Mexico. The Belize pine forests are quite a nice region that they like. In freshwater habitats, they tend to isolated areas that are secluded, like marshes and swamps or even lakes. They also can be found in brackish waters and the grassy savannas of the Yucatan Peninsula as well. Juvenile crocodiles themselves prefer dense cover to protect themselves from other predators, and adult crocodiles have been known to burrow during dry seasons in this area as well. And their range can overlap a lot with the American crocodiles. That's a bit issue there. And recently, they've actually been introduced into the Rio Grande, which is kind of a little bit of an issue. And people thought they were like American alligators, but the Morelet's crocodile have been seen. They've also been potentially reported in some other locations, potentially introduced there. So in terms of hunting and diet, like most crocodilians, they are highly opportunistic and prey on anything that's pretty much smaller than them. Uh, Typically, babies feed a lot more on small fish and insects. Little guys, they like to feed on insects and fish and things like that. But as they get bigger, they will feed on larger animals such as small mammals, birds, reptiles, fish, as well as invertebrates, things like that. These small mammals can be like domestic cats and dogs, up to goats. Adults have been seen eating large animals like in nearly adult cattle and adult tapirs, though they have been seen scavenging as well, killed by jaguar. They can be killed by jaguars, and they're cannibalistic, so they will eat each other. In terms of reproduction, it's not too different from other crocodiles as well. They typically will breed throughout April to June, and the eggs are laid before the start of the raining season. They're also quite unique along crocodilians is that they will usually build a mound and nest only, but not the mound and holes. These mounds can be about 3 meters wide and about 1 meter high, and can be found in the water or on floating vegetation. Let's see if we can find the babies again, since we're talking about them. Little cuties. So the female then lays between 20 to 45 eggs that have been found containing eggs of more than one female, though. And these eggs are buried and the nest is guarded by the females. Then the babies will hatch after 80 days of incubation, and the hatchlings are about 17 centimeters long as they hatch. And then after the eggs have hatched, the females will carry the young to the water in her mouth and be protected by her. Female crocodiles are very good mothers. They're very protective of their babies. They'll be very aggressive towards them. And even in captivity, juvenile crocodiles get treated aggressively by adult crocodiles, but never hatchlings as well. So these guys are very protective of their babies, which is quite cute, I think. So let's have a look at the adult there. This is the female. We'll have a look at you. Very, very pretty. So in terms of conservation, they are, I believe they are least concerned, so that's good. But they've been long been threatened by habitat destruction, the deforestation and pollution, things like that, and illegal hunting. So hunting have actually greatly decreased their populations because they were hunted during the 1940s and 50s for high quality leather that can be made from their skins. But luckily they are considered least concerned and for the most part doing quite well now, though those issues still remain. So we need to make sure that we take care of them because they're quite cute little crocodiles. I really, really love Morelet's crocodile. I always love getting more crocodiles. I have a special place in my heart for these guys. Really, really cool, and I love seeing them swim around too. It looks so awesome. Definitely a big fan. Really, really cool. Anyway, let's carry on. So, next 3 mods are all done by Great Cakes. So we're going back into prehistory. We have got a really big animal. We've got Josephoartigasia. So this is a really, really cool animal. So this is really cool. So this is an extinct genus of quite enormous diamid rodent that comes from the early Pliocene to early Pleistocene of Uruguay. So the only living member that is related to this guy, the only living member of the group is the Pacarana, which is another large rodent. It's not quite as big as the capybara, but still up there. So a lot of people refer this as the giant capybara, but they're actually not all that closely related to capybaras. So this was named by Uruguayan national hero Josephoartigasia, and there are 2 different species. So there is J. magna, which was described in 1966 on the left mandible, and J. mosey, which was actually described by a partially complete skull in 2008, which is quite interesting. So, as I mentioned, it was first discovered by a bunch of sea cliffs in the San Jose department, and these enormous fossils with the molars and things like that actually led it to got a new species. And then they were originally going to they called it the new species Artesia magna, but then the genus was actually found to be a part of the genus Artesia was taken. So then they renamed it in 2007 to be Josephoartigasia to replace the name so it wasn't used by something else. And then 2008, the species J. mosey was found, and this is the big one that's depicted here. It was based on a massive and nearly complete skull, and the name Mose is actually... for his work on South American rodents as a way to honor him. So that's really cool. As I mentioned, they are a member of the Deinogalerix. So a group of high-growth rodents from South America, and the only living member is the Pacarana, which is one of the largest living rodents that gets to about 15 kilograms. So it'd actually be a great animal to put in the game. I think it might have already been. That'd be a great one. So this is a really ancient group with the Pacarana being the only one around, which is really cool. So in terms of the age, J. mosey was found in situ on the San Jose member, and these guys were most likely around from the late Pliocene to early Pliocene, so between like 5 to 2 million years ago. So that's where they found. The older species is from probably upper Pliocene to Pleistocene. So that's kind of where they fit around in those times. So in terms of teeth, because what we know of them is their teeth, they seem to have very typical rodent teeth that grew continuously throughout their lives, and very big grinding teeth with thick enamel coats that was allowed them to obviously bite into things. In the larger species, Mosey, they have equal sized grinding, so they were quite well adapted, and the molars were actually shorter than in J. magna as well. And they also had large, broad incisors, especially Mosey, so they were well adapted for dealing with great stresses and all the abrasion and stuff of eating all these really, really heavy foods and things like that. In terms of the skull as well, Mosey's is the only one that's known from a skull, and it's actually quite massive. The skull itself was about 53 centimeters, or about 1 foot 9 inches. And for comparison, the average size for a cow is about 52.8 centimeters. So it's basically a cow-sized head, and its skull is actually 75% bigger than the next largest rodent, Probendemus, which is actually a relative of the capybara. So its skull is quite similarly shaped to the capybara, probably due to like convergent evolution. And you could look similar, but they're actually not that closely related. They have deep insertion points for large masseter muscles, so quite well adapted for chewing and eating tough foods, seems like it. And these guys, squalls, quite similar to, as I mentioned, the Diomyids, which is quite interesting. And there's been estimates of their body mass, so there's been a little bit looking into that. J. Mosey was actually the first one where a near-complete skull was found, and then J. Mosey's found to be much larger than J. magna. This is why it's depicted here. 2008, the first kind of initial sizes looking at it, there was estimated to be between 468 to 2,500 kilograms, with an average of about 1.21, so this is believed to be over a ton. For comparison, the largest living capybara is about 60 kilograms, and then some estimates have even put it about like over a ton. And some estimates have put Probendemus, which is a close relative, the next largest rodent, was about 407 kilograms. So this makes it pretty much the largest of all the rodents. Though there has been a lot of critiques, and the most recent kind of study looking into it has actually been looking into more accurately sizing. This is actually just in 2022. So they looked at the size ratio and things like that, and they produced a body length for this guy of about 262.8 centimeters, or about 8 feet long. And he noted that rodents typically have long heads. In terms of, we'll have a look at the babies. Let's see if we can find the babies. They're probably swimming around in there. Let's have a look at you. Let's put you on land. We'll have a little bit of a break and have a look at the baby, because I know we love the baby. So in terms of size, as I mentioned, about 8 feet long, and they calculated the body mass to be much lower, between 250 to 576 kilograms, or just over half a ton for J. Mosey. And the other next biggest, the Probendemus, this was about, I'll even say that, about 108 to 200 kilograms, or about 238 to 441 pounds. So that's probably a much more accurate kind of size for these guys, it seems. And there has been some looking at it suggested based on more like the same size, about 400 to 500 kilograms, more likely range, so half a ton. So even though it's still the largest rodent, it's much smaller than we thought. So Pacarana is about half a ton. These guys, Josephoartigasia is probably about Josephoartigasia, I believe that, not Josephoartigasia. Josephoartigasia is about half a ton at the biggest, not the multiple 2.5 ton or 1 ton big rodent that it used to be, but still a huge animal. It's still up there with modern cattle. It's still huge and still much bigger than Probendemus, I believe you say that. Probendemus pattersoni, which is only about 200 kilograms, which is still huge. Even like 150 kilograms, it's still a big animal. That's the size of most big animals today. So that's pretty cool. It's still interesting. Really, really cool. Love these guys. And love that we're getting some extinct moths. Because this guy's been in Jurassic World Evolution too, but now we finally got him in Planet Zoo and swims around like a capybara, which is quite cool. So in terms of its bite, there's been lots of evidence looking to its bite. It actually has a bite that is like comparable to that of like a polar bear. So these guys weren't probably hunting things like polar bears, but had quite strong bites. Reinforced skull, enlarged in sizes that have been potentially used for digging up roots, or even sometimes suggested large burrows. But there's been mega burrows discovered in South America, but we don't know if it was from Josephoartigasia because it could have been from like ground sloths, which have been known to dig burrows, and potentially could have used these large teeth to defend themselves against predators like borohyenids, which were a type of marsupial carnivore, and terror birds, and be able to charge them. So these guys are quite powerful bites. Um, Potentially like up there with polar bears and jaguars and things like that. So quite a strong bite. And in terms of diet, suggests these guys like to eat a lot of fruit and soft plants, which is interesting, and may live in an estuarine environment. And Jane moans he actually may not have been able to grind up tough plants because of its weak chewing muscles, but probably could have broken into things. But they would have likely allowed it to eat. This was like a recanted after looking at the immense bite force that these guys had. So they probably had quite a generalist diet, feeding on both hard and soft foods, and may have actually used their teeth to dig into things, dig up roots like elephants do with their tusks, which is quite interesting. And they probably would have been quite important for the ecosystems as well, as they ate a lot of plants and, passed them through their guts and put them somewhere else. So quite important for propagating the ecosystems. And also there's been carbon isotopes, so you literally are what you eat. So it seems to be eating a lot of C3 plants, so things like leaves and fruits as opposed to grasses. So these guys were definitely more browsers. Though the modern capybara has been known to eat more leaves and fruits over that as well, which is very interesting. But will still eat grass as it needs. So these guys probably, if it was lean times, they would definitely eat grass. In terms of its ecology, though, or paleoecology, these guys have been identified from the Sansanosmilus member of the Rugged Formation, would lived with toxodonts like Trigodon and Chiroidosoxodon, also ground sloths, Glyptodonts, and the scimitar tooth cat Xenosmilus, along with terror birds and an extinct species of vampire bat, and also called Demus draculae, and also several fish and turtles. It lived in this forest estuarine system, and these are typically dated to the Pleistocene. And during this time, the climate of Uruguay was actually evolved from a dry, semi-arid one, which concluded with the onset of the Quaternary glaciation, which made it warmer and more humid, and giving that reforestation. So they likely went extinct, potentially a little bit because of just climate change. Really, the habitat they preferred was gone by the end of the Ice Age, which is interesting. But yeah, really, really cool. Love these guys very, very much. Nice one. So we're going to be moving on. We got another one done by Great Cakes, another extinct animal. So we're going all the way to Spain now, I believe, or Italy. So these guys are called Deinogalerix. So Deinogalerix just means in ancient Greek terrible or Terragalix. So these guys are a type of Gurmine that lived in Italy in the late Miocene, between 7 to 10 million years ago. So they are endemic to the islands of what was then the islands of Garrigo, which was now a peninsula in the southwestern Italy bordered by the Adriatic Sea, and were first described in 1972. So these guys are actually a type of hedgehog. So they're in the hedgehog subfamily, called guys or moon rats, but are not actually rats, but rather hairy, superficially rat-like relatives of the hedgehogs lacking quills. So if you look at their relatives, Galerix or the Gurmines, very, very interesting group. They're very hedgehog-like. Which is very, very interesting. But they're mostly extinct now. They kind of resemble rats, but they don't look like that. But most of them are sadly extinct. So these guys most likely had long, thin, conical faces, as you see here, with small pointed ears and long hair. So this is a pretty good reconstruction. There is a few different species described, but the largest species, which I'll actually check if this is actually the largest species, which is most likely the case. Connerswald, which is the largest species known of this genus of Deinogalerix. The skull in itself was about 21 centimeters long, and the entire body measured about 60 centimeters long, so between 8 inches and 24 inches for the head and body, respectively, and may have actually occupied the same niche as dogs and cats in the ecosystem, and actually shared its niche with the giant barn owl Teodontacea. And like other relatives of this guy, it was believed to be an insectivore, so mainly feeding on invertebrates, crickets, and dragonflies, and even snails. But being larger, especially Coswaldi, which was the largest, could have survived on eating all sorts of small mammals and reptiles and birds. So in the late Miocene, this was the area in Italy was actually a group of small islands, and only at a later date did they actually connect to the mainland. And it's known that these animals sometimes evolve quite differently on islands. These islands all of a sudden have gigantism. So it's really awesome to see how they evolve on islands and things like that. And it's possible that Deinogalerix may have actually lived exclusively on the Guineafowl, which is that long gone island, which is quite cool. Really, really cool little guys. Definitely love to see the little babies. Another really cool little extinct animal. I love talking about extinct animals. I really, really do. Because there's so many weird extinct ones, just as much as there is today. So it's nice to get a good variety. So, last up, but certainly not least, we've got another last one by Great Cakes Mod. We've got another extinct guy. We have got Sansanosmilus. Sansanosmilus, let me say that. You the nice one? Yeah, you're the good one. So this is Sansanosmilus. These guys are an extinct genus, are carnivorous mammal in the family Barbophylidae. So this is a relative of Barbophyllus, which was another group of like saber-toothed cats. They're called the false saber-toothed cats because the true saber-toothed cats are like the Macarodonts, like Smilodon. They're kind of like a group that independently evolved the saber teeth, but they're not closely related to Smilodon itself. And these guys only lived in Europe. So they lived during the Miocene between 13.65 to 9.7 million years ago and existed for approximately about 3 million or 4 million years. There's feelers as well. So as I mentioned, they're a member of the family Barbophylidae, which is a group of feliform carnivores, either related to felids or nimbravids, which was another group of saber-tooths. Saber-tooths, if we get to talk about that, that's really interesting. Like the saber teeth actually evolved quite a few times within the history of prehistory. So it's evolved in like marsupials, evolved a couple times in like carnivorans, and gorgonopsids have them as well. So it's quite an interesting topic to talk about. So these guys had very short legs, but were very muscular and had a long tail. This species itself, Parliamodens, we say that, these guys got to about 1.5 meters, or just under 5 feet long, and weighed about 80 kilograms, so about the size of a leopard. And in 1961, they actually suggested these guys had a plantigrade walking stance after studying the foot bones, and compared it to those of the like true felid Pseudolurus from the same site. But that actually differs a lot from Barbophilids, that other Barbophilids or later ones that were semi-plantigrade or semi-digitigrated. So these guys should potentially have a little bit more plantigrade walking, so its heel should be on the ground. So that's probably a little bit of a pair with it. But I imagine that's also kind of the rig as well. Anyway, so the type species is Sansanosmilus platidens. These guys are known from the Orlésian to Asian stages of France. And also Abelismilus is called a junior synonym. They've just described as different species. And there's been a couple other species described. And these guys seem to be closer than like Barbophyllus itself. And the other two species described was based in 1932. And then Robustulus was actually described further with new material assigned in 2022. So it's a lot of interesting things assigned to this guy. So also, as I mentioned, a type of Barbophyllid. So they were a really interesting group of false saber-toothed cats. We'll talk a little bit about how saber-tooth evolved. So the first time these saber-teeth or large canines evolved was in Gorgonopsids in the Permian. Then we got them in like Thylaccosmilus, which is, you know, like a really weird group of marsupial kind of carnivores. And then you got them in Nevravids, Barbophilids, and Macarodonts, which includes Smilodon and Megatherion, things like that. So it seemed to be a combination that worked a lot with the cat body plan and evolved multiple times throughout history. There's a really great book on it by Mauricio Anton. I think it's called The Evolution of Saber-Tooths or something like that. It's a really great book, and it really explains in great detail. But yeah, really, really cool to get another saber-tooth, especially a underrated one. And I love Barbophylids, especially Barbophyllus. It looks like so cat-like, but just really, really weird. And these guys got long tails as well. So Barbophyllus is very interesting as too. But yeah, really, really nice. So very interesting assortment. So yeah, I've got to thank everyone. So thank you, Lorby, and Just That, and Great Cakes Mod. Great Cakes Mod, you have definitely dominated this one today. But yeah, really, really awesome, great amount of animals. Really, really love it. So I think this is a great place to end the video. So I really, really, really hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. Always remember to hit the little bell icon to get notified with anything. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, hope you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.